And rolling. Welcome back to Discovering Discovery, this special edition. We are watching an episode of Star Trek Voyager. Greg, this is your pick, and what is this titled?
This is Course Oblivion.
From Season 5, correct?
Season 5. Toward the end.
Yes, towards the end. It brings up some interesting ideas, but I think we come down to the encapsulation of it. It is a really, really great sort of stand-in for what the entirety of Voyager is.
I don't feel like you need the realies.
What?
It's like a solid stand-in.
What was the thing that you said that you were trying to be a more positive person? I'm just
saying it wouldn't be an intro if I didn't mess with you.
All undone. All undone.
Okay, so there was a good point I was working towards, but I guess fuck me. All right.
Just hit the warp button.
All right, let's just hit warp 9 and get right into it.
Bye. This is Greg Payton. Discovering Discovery is taking a brief hiatus to look at the previous best episodes selected by all of us of previous Star Trek episodes that have come in the past.
Jesus Christ, we've gone through two episodes of this, and the entire time you had that in your back pocket. Like, everyone is listening to my mad rantings.
Had what?
I was just saying that was kind of a repetitive little synopsis.
And a great one. Like, that was professional.
No, man, just be like, look, Discovery is on hiatus, and for the break, we're just watching some old Trek episodes, some of our favorite shit from the previous
Why am I being
shows.
Singled out? What happened? What did I do? I did nothing wrong.
You made me watch Voyager.
I did nothing wrong. I refuse to be singled out. This is what I chose. You chose this.
Welcome back, gang. My name is Meagan Washington. I'm the voice of reason.
Never.
Today. Today, maybe.
So, yeah, Star Trek Voyager. This was your pick, Greg. What can you tell us about it?
So this episode of Star Trek Voyager takes place toward the latter half of Season 5. Course Oblivion, I believe on your Netflix it is. Episode either 17 or 18 of Season 5. And it looks at sort of joyous times in Voyager right now. Paris and Torres are getting married. The ship has installed a newly spangled warp drive, which will get them back to the Alpha Quadrant that much sooner, according to calculations. 2 years and change. And things begin to go awry, literally as they're throwing rice at the newly wedded couple. As the
rice starts to phase through the floor.
Mm-hmm. And then slowly the lower decks begin to lose cohesion in a late 90s CGI.
It's kind of a water effect.
Watery, jello.
You know what it reminds me of? You remember the first X-Men movie?
Yes.
It reminds me of when they tried to turn the Senator or whatever into an X-Men and he turned into a pool of goo.
Pretty much. Yeah,
that's kind of what it looks like.
That's essentially the effect of the 90s. When in doubt, turn everything into goo.
Yep. There's a lot of goo in the 90s.
Yeah, that was...
we need to unpack that at some point, but I just don't know if we have enough time to
It's like, hey, we have CGI, but we can't afford to do a lot with it. And we're in TV, and we don't have a lot of time. So.
Goo.
Essentially. But yeah, I mean, essentially the ship begins to break down. They don't know why. Torres is the first casualty. And... Then Tuvok and Chakotay are doing another investigation as to what could be going on, what could be going wrong. And they make a discovery that going back as far as almost a year that they came across the planet Voyager did that literally copied every element about them, their characteristics, their memories, and even the ship itself. And as far as they know, what could the clones be doing? And then they realize... what could the clones be doing?
So then they realize they are the clones.
Yeah, and they realize that when they go back to sickbay and see Torres quite literally dissolve into what?
A pile of goo.
Exactly.
Strangely solid goo. Like, you'll notice she didn't, ooze off the sides of the table. So there was some sort of,
it kind of goes back to the primordial ooze of a sort. They go back to that.
Yeah, it was interesting.
And they realize that basically the cell degradation, which is what they call it throughout the episode, it only occurred as a result of the radiation from the new warp drive, which, had they been the quote-unquote real Voyager, they would not have had on for so long, because it would have affected, harmed, and killed actual humanoids, but it didn't kill them. It just began slowly degrading their cells, which were cloned and duplicated in nature. So unfortunately, it begins a painfully slow and depressing slog of the entire ship falling apart.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of I can't remember what movie it is, but it's like the expedition and like the ice caps, and like everybody's dying and there's scurvy everywhere, and they're just kind of like, well, we just keep going.
Yeah.
The ship got stuck, so we're just gonna walk.
Yeah.
Everybody's dying and there's wolves, but we're just gonna keep trucking, and then slowly everybody just dies.
And initially, Captain Janeway tries to, be Captain Janeway and proceed towards the Alpha Quadrant, and it takes more people dying, and eventually, her second in command, her recently minted friend and confidant, Chakotay, to die, for her to realize she's wrong and that they need to head back to the quote-unquote demon planet, which is where their duplicated substance originates from.
And then in the final moments of the episode, the actual Voyager gets their distress signal and comes to rescue them, only to arrive just a minute too late.
Yeah.
When they've already kind of exploded and dissolved.
Yeah, they've once the real Voyager shows up, the acting captain Harry Kim, tries his best to keep the ship together, and once again, because it's the 90s and they really can't afford to break down an entire ship, they just are like, okay, crap.
All they had to do was blow up a model.
Well, I mean, they did kill Tom Paris off screen, so
yeah. I did notice that. I had a solid giggle about that.
Yeah,
he was one of the few like prime crew members that just randomly died off screen and was never mentioned again.
Yes. This is another one of the episodes. There actually is a previous episode where
at least he gets a call out about it. Tuvok just stops being there.
Just stop being there. Yeah. But I do believe this is another one of the episodes where they have like a duplicate Voyager running around. There was a previous one, I forget which episode, but people who are listening to this, the
Next
what
Generation
it is,
had one as well. They had Yesterday's Enterprise.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like every iteration of a Star Trek series kind of has certain staples. Alternate universe Star Trek,
which is what we're hoping happens with Star Trek Discovery, is that it turns out that this is a Yesterday's Enterprise kind of duplicate alien planet goo situation, and we're just not gonna have had to deal with the last season.
Which, ultimately speaking, is sort of almost a nod to what this episode of Voyager is kind of, sort of, not really saying. It was an episode, Meagan, you were saying that really had no consequences, and was sort of like a bottled episode, or even like a spec script for someone who may have, would-be writer have attempted. But it also posits the notion of, well, this is season 5, toward the end of season 5. Should you not have been happy with season 5, technically you can go to the end of season 4, skip to season 6, and be okay, or the end of season 5 and be okay.
Or at least to episode 18,
right? Assuming
which is the episode
that
following.
The first 17 episodes that we've seen have been this fake crew.
As you guys know, I don't really like Voyager.
Shock, you say?
I know, it's weird.
Fucking lies.
That said, I still don't hate it as much as Discovery.
Well, and I know a lot of people have their issues with Voyager, and I found it to be, when I finished watching the series, to be a little. It was very, very hit or miss. I thought the first season was really rough. But I thought that it got better as the seasons went on, with some exceptions with episodes, such as a lot of the ones that chose to focus on the Doctor. Robert Picardo is a wonderful actor, but that character got real insufferable real fast if not handled well.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a reason why in First Contact there's a joke about how they let the Borg murder him. That's the reason why that's so funny.
That's right. I remember that. No, I remember that. No, I mean when it came to holographic and hologram rights, that's when things got real. Like, oh shit, the Doctor's getting so.
Oh yeah, there was an interesting there was an interesting thing that they set up, and there was an interesting thing that you see later on where you have the ship full of holographic life forms that were from that were from what the Voyager had given to the Herodians, so that they could not like actually come back together as a civilization and not be so spread out as hunters. And then they ended up just advancing the those holograms to the point where they rebelled and then started spreading rebellion across any and all. I guess they called it photonic life.
Yes. That, I mean, it was
there's a great episode of Next Generation as well where Moriarty becomes sentient and takes over the Enterprise.
Exactly. No, it kind of walked that line of, well, new frontier Star Trek, new frontier ideas. Let's take the ideas that we kind of posited in previous shows and actually expand upon them and see what happens. This one was definitely no exception. Yeah, it definitely is a bit of a sad episode because you really do wonder, damn, have I been watching these duplicates the entire time? Like, I think they give themselves an out by saying it's only been the last 9.5 months, i.e., the beginning of the 5th season.
The other interesting thing about this too, and Janeway does get a lot of flack from this from the rest of the crew, but they do find another Class Y planet that they can theoretically land on, which will kind of reconstitute them. And
then get shot at by some ruthless miners who are like, get the fuck away from our shit.
But the thing that is nice, so, it still kind of holds the Star Trek vibe, is she's like, I'm not going to blow them up for defending their planet.
We are Starfleet. And
we might be duplicates, but we're still Starfleet officers.
That touched my feels. That pulled my heartstrings.
Yeah, man.
I was like, all right.
Because that's a good callback. Faced with certain death, they're still like, no. We're still Starfleet officers.
All the way out here in space.
Whereas some people, Michael Burnham,
it was centuries ago at this point. Centuries ago. It was a different time.
It wasn't a different time.
Not that different of a time.
Not that different.
But it was centuries ago.
Maybe century?
Like one?
Really?
Yeah.
Although admittedly, 1918 is really, really different from 2018. So
I'm just saying, McCoy was still alive when Next Generation started.
Which how did he manage that? I guess advances in medical technology.
They dropped him off at the space station in like the first episode.
Oh. Okay, century.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. No. It's not my fault you guys don't watch the show.
It's not that we don't watch it. It's keeping track of the star dates. It's a lot to juggle between 6 different shows.
It wasn't that big of a time difference.
Movies. Fine, it wasn't that much of a time difference.
Okay. You've now established you are a greater Trekkie than either of us.
Yes.
It's not the point.
The crown goes to you.
It's besides the point.
Phaser goes to you. Gold plated.
Besides, we all knew this going in.
Your name is inscribed on it. It'll be in the mail.
It's just not the point, guys. It's not the
point.
Spelled
with one W, one M.
All right, so now that Greg and I have made ourselves feel better about the fact that we totally fucked that up, so about this episode again.
Yeah. So this episode had some really fantastic, disgusting facial prosthetics. 7 of 9 still somehow manages to look hot while melting.
It's the suit. And the fact that it's like major Uber Pilates to keep in that suit. I mean,
it might be the suit. I don't know.
I
think she has zero body fat. I'm not sure.
To Jerry Ryan for having to pull that off. Or was it 2 seasons? Like, geez, 3, 4. I don't know. A long time to have to be pulled into a suit by 3 people. I mean, that's dedication.
Which I'm pretty sure, like this suit was the basis for T'Pol's suit in Enterprise.
Yep. T'Pol's suit was really funny, though. I think they made some jokes about it.
Yeah, which is probably they ended up altering it a little bit toward the later of the season.
Yeah, Jolene Blaylock, though, right up there with Jerry Ryan.
Yep, essentially
known for playing the hot woman on a Star Trek series.
like in this, in the pantheon of many
yeah.
I almost forgot. I'm glad I put it in the messenger when we were going to meet. So I mentioned giving a shout out to
Leonard Nimoy's son who just got married.
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy's son who just got married
to Terry Farrell.
I'm just saying, by the time this episode goes up, that's gonna be old news.
I don't give a shit. Still, it's a legit piece of news that was super exciting to read about, because
it's nice that the family's staying together.
What are the odds of that happening? I mean, that's pretty cool news to happen. I mean, seriously, you have technically a Vulcan marrying a Trill, sort of, not really, ish. Anyway, back to the episode.
I mean, the thing that you can
Paris continues to be a douche. I forgot for the first couple of minutes that I really, really, really didn't like him.
But not without reason.
Yeah, but as the first couple of minutes, I was like, I can't remember why. It's just something about his face just makes me dislike him, but I can't remember what it was.
Then his wife dies.
And then he started being himself again. I was like, oh yeah, that's why.
Mind you, they found Paris on a penal colony for doing some foul Federation shit. So that was his start. He had a long way to reform.
Yeah, he basically was like a rebellious rich boy is kind of his, because his dad's an admiral.
Essentially, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything against the character of Tom Paris. Sometimes I really like him, and he can be enjoyable, and then other times he is that insufferable dickhead friend that we all have.
Mm-hmm.
That we all suffer. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's like,
for some reason,
but you gotta love him.
We're not sure why we suffer them, but we do.
It's just one of those weird quirks of humanity. But I think it's we discovered
it's that hope.
Yeah, I think we discovered
that they can be better.
Yeah. I do think that we discovered that he probably was one of the first hipster characters that I can really think of.
Essentially, I mean, he wasn't rocking a disco shirt, but
yeah,
still a hipster.
I mean, he was going to Earth before it was cool,
right? Yeah, I'm saying
1920s Chicago.
I can think of about a million places I'd rather go than 1920s Chicago.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, several, preferably in Europe.
The plumbing alone is reason enough not to want to visit.
I mean, it was. Listen, any time before now, for a black man, it's even now, it's like this. It's still things are coming up that are still very stressful. So
reasonable.
Yes.
Why didn't he want to go to Risa? Everybody goes to Risa.
I think it's because everyone goes to Risa. I think you just answered the question. I think.
Yeah, but there's a reason everybody goes to Risa.
Well, I think that within the context of this show, him wanting to go to Earth is kind of one of those things of they've been lost in the Gamma Quadrant for now 5 years. They're going to have a honeymoon. Why not have a honeymoon on Earth? Although I do think it was rather presumptuous of saying that it's the best vacation spot in the galaxy. You have all the kinds of peoples, all the cultures. And it's just I guess he's right. Earth does have, a lot of varied cultures, mostly because we don't see the other kinds of cultures on any of the other planets.
And you're basically going to pick the 1920s before any space travel, any advancement, any first contact,
integration,
any cultural integration. I mean, it's definitely, he chose in one era. Was wait, so before the Great Depression, before the Second World War.
That was during.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Roaring 20s always throws me off, but. It's just you picked the one era
That's because everybody was getting drunk to forget about the Depression.
Exactly. There you go.
No, it was all before the Depression. The Depression was the 30s. The Roaring 20s was the good times that nobody thought would end. Oh yeah, but it was Prohibition. No one could legally drink.
Right. Okay.
And then
we're getting our timeline straight, folks.
That's history lessons
between star dates and the history.
Look, my people weren't here yet. Okay, I'm forgiven for not knowing.
The Canadians?
Yeah.
They weren't
here.
No, my family hadn't gotten here yet. They were part of that whole land donation thing that happened.
Both myself and I'm sure many of the people listening do not know Canadian history.
No.
It's okay, neither do I. The Canadian government was desperate for people, so they gave away land for free.
Okay.
To anyone who is willing to be a farmer.
Okay. All right.
That's dope. I'm noticing that we're not talking necessarily a lot about this episode. I'm trying to.
I mean, here's the thing.
I'm trying to figure out why.
This weird thing where stuff happened, but also not a lot happened.
Yeah, essentially, it was more of, like I said, it was more of a bottled episode, which was really put there to reemphasize sort of the good times that they've earned being on this ship, trying to.
I mean, I don't know about that. You get like 5 minutes of like happiness, and then then it's just death.
No, exactly. It's essentially the beginning of any 24 season. I mean, that's like, oh, this is amazing. The first 5 minutes, then the rest of it's just hell.
It's you get Janeway going through, and they're like, yeah, this is our trip back to Earth, and she's like, yeah, but look at all these sweet scientific things we can go and study on the way if we take like dope. 6 months more, or like 2 months more. And do you think the crew would be down with that? And there's just all this
check out this I got this.
And they're like, yeah, man, we're a bunch of scientists. Of course, we're gonna want to study that.
Yeah, so it had all the typical
Starfleet is full of nerds. Because
it had all of those.
Another thing that Discovery is missing.
It had all of that. It had all those wink and nods of like, oh, let's do science shit. Even though like, don't we want to get home? It's like, I want to get home. We got the warp drive. We get home.
But think of it this way: on the way.
Because we could find more dope shit.
Because quite frankly, that's what would be happening. It's like, yeah, I get that. But at the same time, nobody else has been over here. Maybe we should check it out first.
I mean, Voyager basically puts science and exploration in the same priority that we put war and guns here. Like that's their priority. Like their tier of Voyager and Starfleet. It's like science first, survival a close second.
God, I'm reaching for something here.
Well, it's weird because it kind of wipes itself out. You get all these kind of interesting moments between all the characters, and then at the very end, it's like, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I almost thought that they were testing out like, should we do some things with these characters? Should we give this a try? Let's see how the fans react. Let's do a Tom and B'Elanna get married. Let's see what the reaction is and decide if we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
I think it would have been more interesting if they would have rendezvoused with the Voyager beforehand.
Or right as they were falling apart.
Yeah, like before they were completely falling apart, and getting to see the interaction between the Voyager crew and the Goo Babies.
Yeah, almost like seeing a mirror, like a very fractured mirror of what could be.
To see like what Tom's reaction would be to himself marrying, to kind of see all those different relationships and how they were different. I mean, that is the only relationship that you kind of see that is different besides like the new weekly dinners that they're doing.
Yeah, with Chakotay and Janeway, yeah.
Right? Like that's a new thing too. So you have all these new different things, and getting to see the actual Voyager crew kind of witnessing that and being like,
what could be?
Oh, okay. We got married when we were Goo people.
Yeah, there were actually a number of episodes in Voyager where they never really had those kind of interactions with the Voyager meeting the other Voyager and seeing the consequences, both good and bad, of what could be. It was really just telling the audience, well, just so you know, only you guys know this. And so it almost felt in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's like you're robbing something from them.
Yes. It felt like you knew something very, very personal internally as a viewer that you could never share with them as a crew, and in a very sad way to not be able to say, hey, hey, you could do this. Hey, you guys are getting married. Hey, you guys are having weekly dinners. You guys could get closer. And then, you wonder if their relationships could be better in the following episode.
An interesting example of that actually getting done is in The Next Generation. Hang on.
Yeah, I think we can go back to, this is one of the reasons why Voyager has its detractors as well as its fans. This was a very interesting episode. It dealt very bold-faced
Second Chances. That's what it's called. I think it's called Second Chances. Yeah, where they find... Hang on, I was making a point, and I had to pause so I could Google the episode so I could make my point.
Okay.
This episode is brought to you by Google.
This episode brought to you by Meagan cutting people off.
And Bing.
You know what Bing is. Go Google what Bing is.
So it's an episode called Second Chances where they find Riker on the planet. And it's like years and years and years ago, Riker escaped the planet, but then a version of Riker got stuck on the planet. And so you get to experience basically what this episode could have also shown, where you have the version of Riker who is stuck on the planet, who's still in love with Deanna, who'd been trying for years to get off the planet, and eventually goes and is Thomas Riker and goes to Deep Space Nine. And he gets to meet our Riker on the Enterprise, and they get to kind of talk to each other and be like, what do you mean you guys never got married? Like, why would we never get married? And just kind of have them talk to each other and experience that.
See what had happened was.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Yeah, exactly. Right. No, very much so. They actually had the cause and effect and the consequences of that. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, which is really, really interesting. And this is only like, 8 months or whatever, but getting to see that kind of on like a bigger scale, getting to see that kind of reaction or getting to see those kind of consequences and like what that would have done to the characters on Voyager after they did see their counterparts die.
Yeah.
Having them stop and think, oh, this is what I did in this other kind of life.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, there are a number of ways the episodes could have gone, and I would have liked to see that. I would have liked to see, them looking into the mirror of themselves, and seeing that, once again, it would have been another PSA for Starfleet, but seeing that the ideals of, the Federation, can live on despite being copies, clones, or not even human, which is one hell of a tool for propaganda. It's like, what's the best way to spread Starfleet? Just clone it. Don't expose it to radiation, but just clone it. I mean,
well, I do think that there probably was a version of this episode that did include something like that. There were hints that they were trying to go for something like that, but like when Voyager just turned up and there was just nothing left, and they just shrug and go.
Yeah,
that's I don't even know. Like, there's a metaphor in there for either it was either audience or if it was either the executives. They were just like, wait, what had been going on? Oh, all right, never mind.
Yeah, that was kind of weird too.
Yeah,
where it's just like all this happened and they had the distress call, and then they show up and they're like, oh well, back to what we were doing. And it's like, okay, but would the other crew have done the same thing?
Exactly. Yeah, and see, you just asked a perfect question. It's like, if they were in that same situation, what would they have done? That's you just hit the nail on the head, Meagan. That is because you always want to hope that you live up to your higher self, but
Yeah, in this situation, like, which one did we end up with? I know we ended up with the actual crew, but which version of the crew?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, in the story, we're looking at an alternate version of Harry Kim. I think. I mean, at this point in season 5, because there was an arc, an episode rather. They didn't do many arcs, but there was an episode where like one version of Harry Kim ends up dying and having to jump ship to the other ship, and all of a sudden now we have a different Harry Kim. But I think this is a different version of Harry Kim that we're seeing up at this point in season 5. I think the original Harry Kim from season 1 is dead.
That's dark.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's been a minute since I watched Voyager.
Yeah,
so I can't weigh in.
I'd have to, like, when the rotation comes back around, I have to re-examine that and see if that's true again. But because it's been a while for me too. But I distinctly remember just a version of two versions of Harry Kim and one dying. So.
Yeah, I guess going a little bit back to the point I was making before, there is the reason why there are detractors to Voyager, but there's also a reason why it has its solid fans. And it's one of those things of, you could say that you don't like Voyager, but you can't say that it's not Star Trek.
No, it's definitely, like, I mean, especially in later seasons, they kept the spirit of Star Trek, even though they didn't really keep a lot of the, they just kind of fucked off and went and did their own thing.
Because they were fucked off in a whole new quadrant.
Yeah.
But they were able to ground you with Cantankerous Doctor. They were able to ground you with another Vulcan.
Well, yeah, and I mean, all things considered, even though they did do stuff that was completely different, story-wise, plot-wise, arc-wise, everything-wise, they still did have the kind of fundamental bones of Star Trek.
Yeah, I think the downside to Voyager is that at its worst, it is basically a lesser version of TNG, and that's almost all it is. But at its best,
kind of like a younger sibling.
Yeah.
I would actually even venture to say at its best, it's what you would see an episode of Deep Space Nine if they were traveling. Like if they were put in dire situations and forced to make devil's bargains. It reminded me, some darker episodes reminded me of like the darkest episodes of Deep Space Nine, where you'd have to make a devil's bargain to either save Starfleet or save a ship or what have you.
I think what it comes down to is that, and I think that they came across this accidentally, was the fact that Captain Janeway, at least when she started, was not a great captain. I think she was
kind of a terrible captain, and she's not particularly likable.
Yeah. I think that actually in the bars of Star Trek captains, or in the bars of Star Trek captains, she had a lot to improve upon, but in the bar of Starfleet captains, and here's what I'm thinking, is that we only follow like the greatest of the great captains in Star Trek. We're following exemplary captains, ones that get written about in like textbooks and are studied later at Starfleet Academy. You never just see just an average captain. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Janeway was. She was just an average Starfleet captain who, if she had remained within the Alpha Quadrant, would have been a great captain to serve under, and it would have been, a very successful ship, but it probably wouldn't have been anything to write home about. But because she was thrust into this extraordinary situation, mm-hmm. where she herself was not an extraordinary person, mm-hmm. she had to learn how to become that, because she made a lot of mistakes, mm-hmm. And made a lot of terrible decisions early on. But I think by the later season, you saw her making less and less of those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And that was really exemplary of the entire show, and thematically as well, because I mean, I'm remembering the fact that, the entire ship is comprised of former Maquis or current Maquis, depending upon how you want to look at it, who have chosen to side with the Federation.
It's kind of a Hogan's Heroes kind of thing.
Yeah, and then you also have, convicts. You have rookies, and none of whom should technically be able to work together on a ship for more than an away mission, much less 7 years. So it really was the motley crew of starships.
Yeah. And I mean, it does kind of talk about that too, kind of to what you said. Like, there's people who, there's episodes where they talk about Riker. It's like why he hasn't gone off and taken his own command yet, and they keep trying to make him leave and take his own command.
From my cold dead hands. Like first of all, Picard won't leave. Riker won't stay. Like, what the fuck?
Well, no, Riker won't leave because he's like serving on the Enterprise, and it's like
they both won't leave, right?
Yeah, and it's like a huge. They do episodes about it where they're just like, okay, no, it's really
on more than one occasion.
It's really time for you to go and like captain your own ship.
Yeah.
And he's like,
people are starting to talk.
He's like, yeah, but this is the Enterprise. Like, why would I ever leave?
But also too, that was a major dick move, because the longer that fucker hung around, it's like you do know that there are 5 people waiting to be command right now.
There's so many people who
10
want
people
your job.
have had to transfer off of the ship because you don't want to fucking leave.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's a really famous quote by Julius Caesar that it's best to be the captain of a small Alpine battalion than to be second in command in Rome. And apparently William T. Riker really disagreed with that.
He's like, nah, man, Rome has everything I could ever want.
Nah, bro, we cool, we straight.
My on again, off again girlfriend is here.
Nah, we good. And you would think that would be the reason to leave. But
this is the future.
I want to change up. I'm good.
This is the future. They're like past that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess at the end of the day, like, it's just one of those things. Like, no, I serve as second in command on the greatest ship in the Federation. I get to go captain the not greatest ship.
Not ever.
It's like, how much older is this Jean-Luc Picard guy than me? Because I'll just hold out.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't leave, and even down the road in like subsequent movies, even like Worf goes off, gets his own ship. Right? Like, yeah. Data becomes a captain at one point, I believe.
So does LaForge.
the forge goes off. Yeah. Like everybody else kind of.
Yeah, they all get
their own Riker just like, nah. Ships. He's like, I'm good.
Shit. I mean,
some people were not meant to be captain. Some people were meant to be second in command. It's fine.
And I mean, we saw a really old Riker in Enterprise, like the series finale, just basically replaying out the last official mission of the NX-01, or one of the last official missions of the NX-01.
Jesus, wow.
And just through the holodeck. He gets to play the cook, who was basically the Morn of that series.
Jeez. No, but I mean, really, I feel like this episode and speaks to your point, John, about the fact that to sum up, that the decisions this crew, be them duplicates or otherwise, were at a point where they had all evolved, and I think Janeway opens it up by saying, you're more than crew, you become friends and family. And that's to say, okay, you started off as this very haphazard group of people that Starfleet really had you all on probation, and yet you've managed to come this far. Bravo. And that, I think that speaks a lot to, a lot of people put together in very awkward positions where, in an ideal scenario, you may not work together, but because circumstance and necessity demands, you galvanize, and all of your weaknesses become strengths and all of your flaws become attributes.
Yeah, I would say that almost all of the characters do evolve to a certain degree, except for possibly Tuvok and Chakotay. Like, I don't really see Chakotay changing all that much from when he was really first introduced, other than he starts trusting the captain a bit more, but he always was like this voice of wisdom and reason, and then Tuvok was just always Tuvok. He was the designated Vulcan.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he went through the same journey that Spock went through, as far as,
No, Spock went on a huge journey.
Let me finish.
Like Spock in the... I'm just saying, man. He wasn't as two-dimensional as Tuvok.
I wasn't done.
Okay.
I'm saying, if you recall the actual series of Voyager, there were several episodes where Tuvok had to go to the darker recesses of his emotions to connect with other people, and sometimes that bore good and bad consequences. Chakotay was sort of like how do you describe it? Like a necessary combatant in that he was Maquis, but he was never a zealot, if you will. Like, he never pushed it as far as, say, Torres would.
Yeah, it was the other thing, like, the notion of, like, okay, we're going to have Starfleet people and we're going to have Maquis people in on the ship. It was, like, a really kind of interesting idea, but the only problem with it, then they very quickly figured it out. Like, once they got them all trapped in the Delta Quadrant, it was just like, there's absolutely no reason for you guys to actually be at each other's throats in any way, shape, or form. In fact, if you are, you're the asshole in the situation. Let's get home.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the hell else they could have done if they could have somehow stranded them without warp within, like, the demilitarized zone, and then it is a thing of, like, okay, when we need to get to friendly territory, maybe there might have been more of conflict between the Maquis and the Federation.
There's really no excuse for it after the first, like, episode or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first half season is just like they nip it in the bud pretty quickly.
Yeah, and then it was just like, oh no, you guys are going to do things Starfleet's way because this is a Starfleet ship. But even then, like, we did see episodes where it was Tuvok training. There's like, it was like 3 to 4 like other like Maquis, like former Maquis members, trying to get them up to like basically Starfleet spec, and them kind of chafing at that. And there does come down to an understanding between, Tuvok as the Federation and then the other members of the Maquis. It's just like, okay, the Federation does these things this way because it works, but they are inflexible, and that's what the Maquis brings to the situation. But they never truly explore that throughout the series, and they kind of just, have everything suddenly becomes like, okay, yeah, you guys are all just Starfleet, which I totally understand, because that conflict, like when we're talking about it, it just doesn't really, like, you can't play that out for very long. And I think they were realizing it, and they were possibly sitting around the writers' table. It's just like, do we let it go to its inevitable conclusion, or do we just sweep it under the rug? Because I think if we just sweep it under the rug, we can get more episodes out of this thing. But if we let it go to its conclusion, then it's like the rest of the show is going to feel like, okay, and now we're just screwing around.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you would have had a much more serialized kind of show if you had to do that volley back and forth of their issues being Starfleet and Maquis, in addition to getting home, in addition to exploring, in addition to coming across life forms that want to kill us or harvest us or clone us or make us part of their collective Borg sentience. So they had enough shit going on, essentially. They didn't want to add to it.
Yeah, it just didn't kind of work for that, which is also, but you know, I think that at the end of the day was fine. It wasn't legendary television, but I think it was still like good television, solid watchable, television. And there was a lot of people that did love Voyager, and I'm sure, like, when I first watched this episode, I was like, I really liked it, and I thought back about it, and it was just like, ooh, I wonder how much of what I've seen that wasn't the real Voyager. Were we following these people the entire time, like right after that episode? But then they never really played with the consequences on that on the other ship.
And again, that's the serialized element that I mean. I feel like if they were, say this show were done now, I feel like there would have been more serialized elements that have been a real mind trip to play with the audience's perceptions of, was it this crew? Was it B crew? Was it A crew? Was it B crew?
Yeah.
And what if they say, well, both are true? What do you mean both are true?
And I guess if you wanted to get really weird with it, you could have also said it's like, oh yeah, no, that planet just kept on producing Voyagers.
Which is
Jesus.
Super weird. Fuck, which isn't not a possibility.
Oh shit!
Like
that's right.
There'd be a Voyager armada out there.
Oh my god! Holy fuck! That's very, very creepy.
And what is creepy to me is the line that's delivered where he's like, some of the crew are starting to remember their lives before, and he's like, the shit are you talking about? They were like amoebas before. What do you mean they're remembering their lives before?
What J-Way call it? What the shit are you talking about?
Like, what? Well, I miss my puddle of primordial ooze, man. It was great.
I miss my puddle of mud.
Just
like,
such a weird line.
Their life from before.
I don't know if anybody else caught that.
No, I caught the first time I saw it when it first aired. It's like, the fuck, what, bro? Life from before?
What?
Yeah.
It's like, what happens when they get back to the planet, right? Do they stay?
We go back to the goo.
Do they stay as members of the Voyager crew? Do they turn back to goo? Like, what happens?
My guess is they go back. They would probably go back to being, like, some would probably go back to being Voyager, and some would go back to being goo.
I think maybe they would build a different kind of civilization, because in that episode where they have them actually go to the demon planet, and then they bring back the duplicates can't exist in Earth normative atmosphere. They have to make the atmosphere exactly like the demon planets.
Yeah.
So it's just, at the end of the day, them even getting to Earth was another one of those things that's just like, I mean, I think that
how's that even going to work?
Yeah, not at all. And it was like that thing of like the life support systems was like, it wasn't pumping out Earth normative atmosphere. It was, sending out, the demon planet atmosphere.
Yes.
Well, and that is one of the interesting things, though, where you kind of question Janeway, is that she was determined to get them, quote, back to Earth. And it's like, okay, but did you stop and think about what's going to happen when you get there? And they did kind of bring that up with her, and it's like, what do you think the families are going to just like welcome us back? Like, what?
Well, no, your favorite douchey friend brought that up. Paris brought that up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the one you love to hate. Like he said it. He's like, what? You want to just show up during the other actual Harry Kim having dinner?
Yeah.
How's that going to work out? It's not.
Yeah,
you're a clone. Get out. It's not going to work out at all.
Like there was an interesting kind of like other way that they could have potentially taken this, and I guess the other thing, like, you could also tell with this episode that this could have been a backdoor pilot to a different Star Trek series.
Wow. Yeah. Shit.
Where they all shape-shifted into entirely new characters, and they would have remodulated their ship because they're just like, our ship is giant goo ship, so we're going to make our own ship now. They could have totally gone that direction with this. I'm kind of glad that they didn't.
That too would have been like an interesting thing, kind of like when they went back to, SETI Alpha 5 and Khan was there. It's like, oh yeah, remember that planet that Voyager went to like years and years and years ago? This is that planet, and these are the results of the...
Wow.
What we left behind. They're just hopping across the galaxy, and it's taken them 7 years to get there, but nobody's kind of going back to see what the repercussions were of them
like a different
being where they were when they were.
Like a Delta Federation, if you will.
Well, I mean, they did have one episode that did deal with kind of past consequences. There was a guy that came about whose entire civilization had been assimilated by the Borg.
Right.
Because the Voyager had helped the Borg fight species
8472.
And he definitely blamed them because he was just like, no, the Borg were losing something fierce. Why didn't you let 8472? And then later when you actually meet 8472 and they have a very congenial meeting and it's just like, oh, we can coexist with one another. Then you start to go like,
whoops. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Everyone done fucked up something hard right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's what I mean, those devil's bargains that come back to haunt you, just like, oh, shit.
Well, yeah, and then that's kind of the thing, too, is that they're out there making these choices, and it's like, that's fine, we're never going to be back here again, so who cares what happens to them?
Yeah, they are kind of like saying, fuck you all.
Yeah.
Be like, look, it worked for us, that's all that matters, we have to get back to Earth.
We got back home. I'm an admiral. You get a ship. You get a ship. You get a ship.
Don't worry about it, guys.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, that's what ends up happening. Is like Janeway becomes an admiral.
Yeah, just
I'm pretty sure
leaving a trail of chaos in her
her
wake.
entire bridge crew all get ships because, like, well, y'all survived, so clearly you deserve to be captain. So,
well, at least Harry Kim gets a ship.
Well, I'm pretty sure Chakotay got a ship.
No, Chakotay was dead by the time they got back.
No. That was an episode. That was like an alt version of that they sped to get to Earth. Many people died, but in the finale, they all
basically
survived.
even the writers of Voyager hated their show so much that they kept retconning it.
No, they did not retcon it. They actually survived. Like the actual finale, they all survived. They all like beat the Borg essentially in a blaze of glory with Starfleet, mind you, an armada of ships. Mm-hmm. You saw it. You should see it.
It was a long time ago.
You should see it. It was a beautiful finale.
It's a long time ago.
They had all the ships. You would have loved it. You would have been able to pick out all the ships just from the wide shot.
I'm just saying it was a long time ago.
And they murdered the shit out of the Borg Queen.
Yeah, they really do. In a horrible way.
They didn't give, let's not.
And then
let's not
First Contact happens.
No, First Contact was before that finale.
After.
Wait a minute. Check the IMDb's.
Google more.
I'm just checking IMDb.
Yeah, you'd think this would be a thing that we
96.
would. All right, never mind. When was Voyager's
finale?
I don't know because
2001.
Yeah.
Did it wrap up in 2001?
Yeah, I knew it was after First Contact. Because she still kept kicking after that.
This is how much I blocked out Voyager.
Clearly. Like that.
Second of all, there's no way the Borg...
It's called Endgame. It was the Endgame for the Borg.
I'm going to have to rewatch this. It's been a while.
Yeah, it was legit.
Basically, they tried to assimilate Admiral Janeway, and Admiral Janeway had like somehow infected her, incorporated into a part of her a neurolytic virus, something that would spread without all the entirety of the Borg and break down their ability to actually
assimilate.
Hive mind.
Yeah. Like she single-handedly destroyed the hive mind and also destroyed their ability to become cybernetic organisms. So essentially destroying the Borg.
Which, not... On the one hand, genocide is never a good idea, but on the other hand, I don't think a lot of people are going to be weeping all that much that the Borg are gone.
No.
I just have a lot of feelings about Voyager in general, so...
Well, I guess then this is a good enough time to start doing the wrap-up. Greg, you have your party thoughts?
Parting thoughts. Once again, it's the Voyager, aka I feel like they could have called it Star Trek Motley Crew, because I feel like
wait, when did Voyager start?
96, 97?
It was right around season 2 or 3 of DS9. So whenever
95.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I would honestly call this Star Trek Motley Crew, because it really does show the arc of how these people become unsure, uncertain people, and when everything is said and done, they are a full-fledged Starfleet.
Meagan?
I mean, it wasn't the worst episode I've ever seen.
Okay, that's
glowing praise.
Yeah,
glowing praise.
No, it was fun. I mean, it was fine. It was good.
This was one episode for me that did
not like Klondike bar.
I would say this is one episode for me that didn't.
I'm turning over a new leaf, Greg. I'm trying to be a
positive individual.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already positive except for when it comes to shitty Star Trek episodes. But I'm trying to be less of a downer. I mean, I could have spent the last 45 minutes tearing this episode a whole new asshole, but I didn't.
Yeah, I guess them anger management courses are helping. The state-mandated anger management courses.
That is a lie.
The tapes in their mail.
This was an episode for me that I really liked the first time I saw it, just because it was an interesting idea, but seeing it again for the second time, I definitely did see the overall holes within it, I guess you could say the wasted potential of the episode. I saw a little bit more in stark contrast, but still overall great drama, great characterization and writing. It was a very enjoyable episode overall, and I think it's a great kind of encapsulation of Star Trek Voyager. There's a lot of highs and a lot of lows, and that's kind of what you're getting when you watch Voyager. All right, I can't believe I got everybody to agree to that. So that'll. I
mean, I kind of spaced out for a second. I'm not gonna lie.
Good idea. No, but that's a good note. No, but that's a good note on the Star Trek Voyager Armada being comprised entirely of duplicated people on that alien demon planet. Quick, people watching or listening.
Wait, how do we get back to that?
Just it stuck with me. It really did stick with me.
Because I spaced out for a second and now I'm completely lost.
But seriously, people who are listening to the podcast, comment below about what you think the Star Trek Voyager Armada would look like or be comprised of.
It'd probably be a bunch of Voyagers, Greg.
No, but
they're very unimaginative piles of goo.
I'm very curious to just firstly pitch your ideas. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Do they eventually conquer the Delta Quadrant?
That's what I mean. I'm very curious to know whether they would.
I mean, obviously not. They can't leave their planet. I don't know why you think this is going to go anywhere.
No, it wasn't the planet, them leaving the planet that caused the problem. It was the radiation from the enhanced warp drive. That's what messed everything up. Had they never done that,
you don't know.
Based on their logic of the episode, they would have kept going on. Voyager Armada, it's a thing. Quick, you started this. I'm very curious about that now.
All right, apparently I have now started the thing. So that'll wrap us up for this episode. Joining us next time, we're doing a
special episode next time.
Special episode.
We're showing one of Megan's favorite Star Trek films.
Special episode.
And we might have a special guest, but
maybe.
I will not release that until
in case anybody wants to watch ahead of time.
It is Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country.
Yep, Star Trek 6.
All right. All looking forward to it. We'll see everyone next time. Peace.